Kilo November 4, Yankee Romeo Mike. Hey everyone, this weekend was the CQ Worldwide SSB contest, and I didn't work it. My 11-year-old though, she's a technician. She got on 10 meters. As a technician, she's able to do 28.3 through 28.5 SSB phone, so we were on there, and 10 meters was working very well, so she had a great time. But we were out of the running for about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours, dealing with a bizarre issue, which I ultimately figured out was the coax. And luckily I had a 100-foot run of coax ready to go, and ran outside and got that hooked up and got us back in the game. But learned a lot, because it's the first time I've ever had coax go bad on me like that. So thought I'd share some of what happened, the lessons learned, and so on. The symptoms. Now, I did not notice anything prior. I do always check SWR with the antenna analyzer, in part because we hadn't put the antenna we were using, a 10 meter dipole, up. We hadn't used that for a while, so ran it through the SWR analyzer. Nothing seemed too out of the ordinary. The SWR seemed a little bit higher since the last time we had used it. I thought last time we used it had been around 1.1 or 1.2 all throughout the band. It was about 1.3 or so, maybe a little bit higher. I didn't think much of it. We leave those cables outside. They're subject to stretching. It's just Amazon speaker wire. The SWR I was getting was more than acceptable, but I did note that it was just a little bit higher than usual, but didn't think much of it. I didn't do any kind of coax analysis, even though both my analyzer and the Nano VNA I have are capable of giving me various kinds of information on the coax. I never bothered. And it's RG8X coax, by the way. Anyways, during the contest, I noticed that while transmitting at 100 watts, I have the radio set to monitor SWR. Just, I like to keep an eye on it. And I also have an MFJ 894 power meter that kind of shows me, forward and backward power on the needles. Just like to keep an eye on it. I don't know, try not to be too paranoid, but I feel like if something goes wrong, that will be my first warning that something's going wrong somewhere in the system. And indeed, that's what happened this time, where I was noticing that the SWR on the radio meter would randomly jump to infinity, or jump up to 9 or 10, or, like I say, higher to the infinity symbol on the radio. And I thought, is it just the SWR meters going on, or something weird? Maybe, I don't know, maybe I figured because it was the contest, maybe there's some other local ham, and my front end's getting something going on, and that's messing with the SWR meter. That seemed a little far-fetched. I don't even know if that's possible, but it just seemed a little bit weird. But I also switched over to the power meter on the radio, and I noticed that it was also dialing back, where usually it would show 100 watts out. It was cutting its own power sort of intermittently. Again, this would happen. When I say intermittently, it would happen for like a second or two, or maybe a few seconds at a time, and then it would go back to full power. SWR would look normal, everything would seem fine, and then intermittently, suddenly it would be all weird again, and or it would go back and forth. Just seemed to be sort of randomly like that. And the one thing was that monitoring the power meter, the SWR meter, and just the power meter on the MFJ 894, which has the needles, it was happening, I guess, so fast that the radio's sensors were picking up on it and could show me. And I also have the radio's sensors set to stick at their maximums for like a second or two. This is the ICOM 7100, so you have the ability, there's a setting where you can tell it, like, leave, whenever one of your meters moves to a max, it'll sort of linger there, and so that you can you can kind of notice, what the peaks are. But this was happening. I guess it was happening too fast for the needles to really pick up on what was happening. But I could see it happening, and we were having trouble making contacts. My daughter was trying to give her call signs to people. She would finally get through a pileup. She'd be trying to get her call sign across, and I noticed other stations where they kept like missing certain letters in her call sign and kept asking to repeat, and it seemed to coordinate with our power dropping out in the middle of her trying to give her call sign, and it was getting very frustrating. So I was also a little bit concerned about, didn't want to damage the radio or anything like that. So I figured, okay, maybe there's a loose connection somewhere, and so yeah, I was checking every single connection. Went outside, took the antenna up, took the antenna down, checking everything over and over, and nothing visibly seemed wrong with the coax. But it is probably a 60 or 70 feet run out to our antenna, so I can't inspect every single part of it quickly. Um, so like I said, I just cut bait and threw out a new piece of 100-foot coax and just decided to use that. And that got us through the day. And suddenly when I replaced the coax, the radio, everything on the radio was working perfectly, and everything seemed fine. So that seemed to be the problem. What I'm going to do now is I took a couple videos of the coax. So I thought some people might find it interesting. I'd never seen what happens to coax that has an issue, and I was able to find the trouble spot and see what had happened to water penetration in the braid. So let me show that very quickly. Here we have the coax. I was able to eventually find the fault, and it's pretty obvious. I have no idea what happened there. Either I dinged it with the lawnmower, possibly, or the weed whacker, or it just broke over time, or possibly an animal chewed on it. I don't know. But you can see that's the hole, and water started getting into it, and I would say at least 5 or 6 feet in both directions from this hole is where water just wicks its way up the copper. In other words, I had to go 5 or 6 feet in each direction from this hole. Sorry about the repeater on, or radio on the background. It's one of the repeaters I ding. 5 or 6 feet from this hole to finally see bright shiny copper again. So beware. Hopefully the camera can catch this. You can see how this is a piece of the coax that had the water damage, and you can see how, and this is like several feet from the actual break point, you can see how it is all black, or blackish, up and through a piece of the coax, and then goes around, and finally you can see where it starts to turn bright shiny copper again. There you go, the focus. And that's what that water will do. It'll just wick right up through the coax and start corroding the copper. So you can see the transition to finally where the water didn't penetrate. And I don't know, I'll try and find some use. Maybe I can salvage the braid from this and use it for grounding or something like that. Yeah, so I guess the question I have now is, should I bother doing any kind of checkups or preventive maintenance or any kind of protection to protect the coax, or should I just, this coax had been outside in the sun, the Florida sun and rain and everything else for about 2 years, so should I just plan on replacing it every 2 years, or what do I do? Well, I'm starting to think that, as I said at the beginning, both my antenna analyzer and the Nano VNA, they have the ability to give me all kinds of diagnostics about the coax, the impedance, the return loss, the length, and so on, that the coax, at least that the meter thinks the coax is, velocity factor, and all kinds of things can be figured out. And while in and of themselves that may or may not tell you anything about the health of the coax, but I figure if I start with a fresh piece and take some baseline measurements, or at least take it at a time when I believe the coax is healthy, and then take those measurements again. I don't know how frequently. Probably wouldn't bother to do it weekly, probably not even monthly, but maybe quarterly. If I put it on the calendar every 3 months to go through that with my coax and give it kind of a checkup, I might have picked up on the problem. Because as you saw in those videos, at least I don't know how quickly that water penetration will spread and seep up the braid like that. I'm just guessing that that was something that took place at a minimum over several days and probably over several weeks, if not a little bit longer. So it might have been picked up on, and I might have realized that the coax wasn't quite so good. And I believe it's possible even that, and I probably should have uh, left the coax as it was rather than cut it up like I did, because I probably could have used the meter, or at least it would have been a cool experiment to use either the antenna analyzer or the nano VNA to see if it could predict where in the coax all that corrosion and stuff was taking place, if it has that ability. I know, at least I believe, that both of those can tell you where there's a break in the coax or a impedance bump, and I wonder if that might have it might have shown me whereabouts the problem was, but at this point I've cut it up, so oh well. But it might have very well picked up on the fact that there was a problem somewhere in the line, um, and I might have replaced that coax a little bit sooner. And then, should I bother to bury the coax? I don't know if the coax I have, or if I did order some more RG8X this time from DX Engineering. Just after shopping around, they did have a decent price on it, and they're known for many things, I guess, DX Engineering, but I think most people agree their coax is pretty good, and the prices are fair, I think, on the RJ8X, which is all I'm willing to pay for this time for HF. And I think, for given the lengths of my runs, I don't know that I'd benefit from any more expensive coax anyway, other than maybe it would do better out in the weather. But we'll see how theirs does. Um, but I don't know if it's variable. I could enclose it, so there is the option of getting some just PVC garden pipe or something, and running it through that to protect it from the sun, at least. I've also thought, well, why not just paint it? There's got to be some kind of paint or something out there that if I painted the coax, and again, my runs are going to be about 60 feet or so, so a simple can of spray paint or something that would potentially give it a little bit more UV protection, and maybe keep it from drying out. I'm not saying necessarily paint, maybe something else, some kind of clear coat. I don't know. I'll look into it. I'm really open if anybody has any suggestions, so that maybe instead of it lasting only 2 years out in the sun, maybe we can get another year, maybe another 2 years out of it. Who knows? I've tried to keep it a little bit in the shade and stuff like that. Run it along the house under the eaves, that kind of thing. But it is what it is. And again, it's kind of a rare occurrence for it to go bad, but who knows? Might be worth a little bit of effort to protect it. So, anyways, I just thought, I hadn't seen any bad coax videos on YouTube and help you identify the symptoms. I don't know that what I posted here will be super helpful. Just that when you see bizarre things happening, maybe it's the coax. Some of the symptoms I had, like I said, I thought it was a loose connection. It's probably similar symptoms, but could be your coax. You just never know. And I had no idea that I had that hole in the shield. And water obviously had gotten into the braid. I still kind of wondering what happened there. Either my best guess is an animal, but who knows? It might have just rubbed against something. Could have, who knows? Anyways, I'll leave it at that. We did get on the air. We did enjoy the contest. Worked all kinds of countries. and 10 meters. So, my 11-year-old technician had a great time. So the day was saved by having a spare run of Coax ready to go. Um, so always keep a spare. That would be the main lesson, if anything else. All right, 73s from KN4 YRM.